Did it
Welcome
work?
to Crack Movie Club. Dang it, you ruined it. Welcome to Crack Movie Club, the show where we do a book club, but for movies which are like books but better. I'm your host, Jordan Breeding, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Jesse and Allie. Say hello.
Hello.
Whoa!
Yeah,
What's new?
we didn't have a single viewer until you said that, so I think we're good. We're talking about movies because that's what we do. Allie was convincing us to go watch a racist, horny play. At least that's the way it was
exactly
described.
how I described it. 100%.
Yeah. And I told her, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. She's like, no, you got to do it.
No, you have to, or I'll never talk to you ever again. What do I hear? I hear something.
That's I was turning on the feed and the audio came up.
I was like, oh no, I hear some annoying woman's voice. Who the hell's that?
Oh, it's just Jordan.
Yeah.
It's Jordan being reductive.
Hey guys.
We're doing this thing. We're doing this podcast. It's a live stream though, so if you're watching it actively live, as 97-ish of you are, we are taking comments, questions, concerns, alternate titles for the film, and we've got Brian trolling through the chat looking for those and starring them, and so we'll talk about them at the end if they warrant consideration further.
Wow. I like the new level of discernment that's being implemented here.
Great. Actually, here's the first question.
Okay, go ahead.
Logan Coggins asked, I thought crack.com had been bought and isn't continuing anymore. It's really fun that we actually rebooted the YouTube channel 2.5 years ago. People still don't know that, but I see that you're on Facebook, where we have posted 200 pieces of content a day, every day for the past 15 years. So it's pretty surprising that you're just now realizing Crack still exists. There are 4 million followers on the Facebook page. It doesn't.
Wow.
Well, we should say it's not the user's fault. It is the fault of the algorithm. And
oh no. Yeah. I'm not mocking Logan. I'm mocking life. And, and
content.
Zuckerberg and everything like that. Hey Logan, we're still here. It's different. There's a lot to explain, but I'm not going to do it right now. So today we watched, previously, maybe you watched it today, All That Jazz from the 1979s.
Yes.
Every last drop of jazz. We watched it.
Ooh, 1979.
2 hours.
We could talk about this later. 1979, amazing year for movies. All the movies that came out in 1979 are just banger after banger after banger.
What are some? I can't think of one.
Alien, The Muppet Movie, Kramer versus Kramer. All movies that are great. These are all winners.
Blank Man.
Blank Man.
It's like the 1999 of the 70s.
Yeah, because actually 9/11 happened in 1981 before it happened in 2001. A lot of people don't know that. And it changed the media forever.
I mean, it didn't, but that's fine.
I was like, this is a joke. I don't understand. I don't want to
what happens,
like a rube.
It happens every year, depending on how you want to score that.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we watched All That Jazz, and I'm going to recap it for those of you that haven't seen it as best I can, and then Allie is going to defend why the hell we had to watch it in the first place. So, All That Jazz follows a both theater and film director, presumably, who is simultaneously attempting to get a Broadway show rolling. And specifically, he does a lot of the choreography. So he's trying to get all these dance numbers right. And then simultaneously, he is editing. I don't think it's his first film. I think it's his second film, at least his second film. He had a great film previously. It seems really in his head about it, but it's called The Stand-Up. And he's repeatedly editing this one stand-up routine from the titular stand-up comedian. And as he's doing this, he's womanizing, he's taking drugs, he's listening to Vivaldi, so things are bad. And sort of his personal life is collapsing a little bit, but ultimately, spoilers, because we always do spoilers, so just buckle up. Hey, Joe Maximus, good to see you again. This is a person I know in real life. He has a heart attack because he's going too hard, and they tell him to chill out, and he doesn't, and he dies, but not before hallucinating an entire musical number at the end, and also intercutting throughout the entire film him flirting with the angel of death, and also having weird flashbacks and stuff like that. And that's
it.
all she jazzed.
That's all she
as they say.
jazzed.
Which is now going to be one of my alternate titles.
Murder She Jazzed. That's my alternate title.
And so, it's old. Why did we watch it, Allie?
This is one of my favorite movies of all time. 100%. Like, definitely in my top 5. I saw it for the first time when I was in college. I was trying to like figure out who brought it into my life. I texted a bunch of friends being like, who introduced all that jazz to us? Nobody could remember. But what I really do remember is I watched it with like, I don't know, 4 or 5 people.
Wait. Sorry. Stop the press. You said there was no cum in this film, but there is.
There is.
Remember? When he's a young child.
Oh my God, when he's a kid and he gets embarrassed. Yeah, that's true. There is.
Oh yeah.
So just so you all know, there is
guys, there is jizz in this film. There's also naked breasts. I don't know if I'm selling you on this. It's very sexy.
Yeah, if you've never seen a breast,
we just saw like all of our viewers drop off.
Leave. They're like, I don't like those.
Yeah, this is a good place to see breasts and.
I mean, like, honestly, like if you're gonna like sneak a movie in past your parents and be like, it's in the Criterion Collection. It's a piece of cultural history. This is a great movie to sneak
surgery.
Past. Yeah, exactly. Anne Ranking is in it. She's one of Broadway's treasures.
I don't know what makes me hornier: Anne Ranking, open heart surgery, or boobs.
It's just really sort of a tie for me. They're all quite intimate. Anyway, one of my favorite movies of all time. When the credits rolled on this movie, I have such a clear memory of like sitting like jaw dropped in silence through the entire credit sequence. Like we all just were like, and like I think that's like college.
How old were you? Oh, college.
I was in college, so it wasn't like I was like, we got away with seeing boobs. Like it was more like we were moved by the film and like really I was sort of amazed by the execution. I think it's like just a phenomenally made film. The other thing that is just like crazy about it, that whether or not you know a lot about Fosse or don't know a lot about Fosse, it's just a very thinly veiled version of his life, which I also think is fascinating because the history of this movie, and this isn't like secret, he says this in like every interview about the movie, is that famously Bob Fosse had a heart attack when they were doing the out-of-town tryouts for Chicago, and nobody knew if he would live to see Chicago open on Broadway, which he choreographed. And his wife, Gwen Verdon, was in it. And she was the person who had the idea to mount Chicago because she really thought that, one, it was a material that would be great on stage. And two, she wanted to like have something that she had a hand in so she could make royalties off of it for the rest of her life. Because she was in this like sort of messy separation from Fosse and was like, we have a daughter and like we have to take care of this girl. And I want to make sure we have like this like incredible, unassailable nest egg for this girl. I want us to collaborate. Even though we were separated and divorced, I want us to collaborate on a surefire hit. And that was Chicago. And she was right. Chicago's still playing on Broadway to this day. So he had this heart attack. It was not like, you're in perfect shape. What happened? Doctors literally were like, it's kind of a miracle that you've pulled through the amount of like drugs and alcohol and cigarettes and everything that you do. Like, you have to change your ways or this will happen again to you. And he, as like a creative, was like, man, what if I died? Like, what if instead of the doctors being like, hey, you're really lucky, this might not have pulled through for you. Like, what if all of those open threads in my life were suddenly now closed? I had no say over it. Like, this was my last shuffle on the earth, right? And so he's like, I want to make a movie about that. And I'm like, I'm interested in what that is. And like, he is so close. What he did in this movie is so close to his life. And like, eventually there would be an autobiography and things like that. But like, this is sort of pre that. And it feels like extraordinarily confessional from how unkind he is about the portrayal of himself as a character. Like, there is no excuses. He's not letting himself off the hook. Every character, when they talk about him, are just like, Jesus Christ, like Joe Gideon is such a dick. He's like such an exacting guy, and he's like not fun to work with. I do think he's a genius, but like he's bad at everything else in his life. Like,
except he's, man, can he fuck?
This boy can really fuck. But like all that stuff about him, like being like a young kid who had his brain sort of like sexually warped because he was like working in these like strip joints essentially when he was like a kid doing vaudeville. All of this is true, and this is all pre him just sort of like saying it. So the movie is this like Fellini-esque are like a self-excoriation, but also a celebration of what he's the best at, which is like putting stuff on film and like his really unique contributions to theater and dance. And it's all cast with people really in his life. Like Anne Ranking's basically playing herself and had to still audition for the role of Katie, like even though she like was his mistress who like was that woman. And like Leland Palmer is playing the Gwen Verdon stand-in, but she also was like a person who he kind of flirted with a lot when they were staging Pippin. Like it's this like weird, I don't know. It's like amazingly made, and I can't believe anybody would make it about themselves. Like everything about it sort of like baffles me, and I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it definitely. I didn't know that much about Bob Fosse going in. I think you got me turned on to Bob Fosse a couple of years ago.
We were on a sketch team when Fosse Verdon was airing on FX, which is a really good series. And so I think a lot of us were talking about how good it was and how much we wanted to do a Fosse sketch.
We did do it. We did a sketch. We had a whole like themed show around it.
Yeah.
But so I didn't know anything about Fosse. He's a super interesting guy. What I just learned, I guess I learned more about like his like background in dance previously, but now seeing that he's just a dude that just like sleeps around like crazy and like ODs on Alka-Seltzer and stuff. It's a bizarrely self-indulgent, but also self-effacing movie.
Yes. And like there are parts of it that you're like, you little dick, because like he's sort of bringing some of his real life beef into the movie. Like at the time, his big, rivalry, whether or not it was one-sided and all in his head or not really, was with Michael Bennett, who is the person who did a chorus line. And so he in the movie is like, what if I did a chorus line in 8 minutes? What if the whole of a chorus line was just the opening of my movie and I did it even better? Like, what an asshole.
That's very funny. I did
not.
What
an asshole. And it's great. That's the craziest part, is that he's like, what if I did your whole musical in 8 minutes and it was just the beginning of my movie? And you're like, well, that's a dick thing to do. It's not going to be very good. And then it's good. Like everything about this movie is like, there's so much of him in it, and like in a way that's like both like incredible and also like frustrating.
I feel like, I get what you're saying. I think this is the kind of thing a person makes so that people will say what you said, but ultimately is still a celebration of what a freaking genius he is. He's like, oh, my life's so bad. But like, also he doesn't die. He's not dead. Obviously he made the stupid movie.
Right. He's obviously not really dead. And
so he's like, well, I guess, this is like what would happen if there were consequences in my life.
Yes. But like what his point isn't to say, it would be a very different movie if his reaction to having this heart attack and being like shaken to make this movie was to be like, what if I made amends in this movie that I wish I made in life? And then like, was it a better fictional version of himself than he was as a real person? Like, imagine how annoying this movie would be if he like found a way to like truly apologize to his ex-wife for being the way he is. Like, he doesn't really ever get he doesn't give himself that closure. It does sort of still end with him messing his life up insanely, even to the point where he's in the hospital and the doctor's like, stop. And he's like, yeah, sure, totally stop. And then like wanders around the hospital bleeding on the walls. Like he doesn't, there is no apology for his actions. He really is digging deep into being like, what if I never learned? And what if I continued to never learn until I die? That's my thought experiment here. And I do agree that it is sort of a celebration of his genius, because like one of the best scenes in the movie, spoiler alert, is that they're working on this musical called New York / LA, Chicago. And the producers come in and like the, like directors and things like that. And he's been working on this number that they haven't gotten to like really work yet. And it starts off and it's great. And then because he's such a dick, he does like an 8-minute additional number where they like take their tops off. And it's like this whole thing about like casual and faceless sex and how like we don't make real relationships with people, and it's all about pleasure and the exchange of pleasure, but it's not like a real connection. And he's like, obviously this is all based on himself too, going through these problems, but it's like he stages something that can never be on Broadway, or if it is, it's certainly not a family musical, which is what these producers are putting their money behind. Yeah. And they're all like it's really funny because they're all sitting there being like, oh God, now this will never play Letterman. Like they like, you know, like they're just like mourning their money. And then at the end, the like ex-wife character who's like part of it is like, you asshole, it's the best thing you've ever done.
Right.
What a perfect
Well,
encapsulation of it.
and there's that thing where it's like they realize they'll make more money if he dies, right? Like they're sort of hoping later in the film, the producers are sort of hoping that he will die within a 180-day window,
Right.
so that they can recoup all their insurance, which is actually weirdly timely in the Batgirl film being shelved by Warner Brothers, which is it's freaking
how appropriate.
$90 million film that's being shelved for low quality, but that can't possibly be it. There are tons of, ostensibly, unless it's truly the worst film ever made.
And it
Obviously
can't be.
And it can't be. And they've released terrible things before, but somebody has gone in and done the math and found that if they don't air it, they can write it off and will probably stand to get 15 to 20 million from it, as opposed to what they were. It was only ever intended to go on HBO Max and be like, hey, subscribe for HBO Max. So a lot of people are seeing that as, oh, maybe this is the death knell of HBO Max, because if you're not trying to get subscribers and you're just trying to get money.
What's the point? Yeah, totally.
Right.
No, it's like, it's very the producers where it's like, you can make more money with a flop than with a hit if you get enough people to invest and then be like, oh no, it's never going to run. We don't have to recoup anything.
And I do think that's interesting because, to your point, it's sort of like that too, to me, feels like everybody probably wishes I was dead because I'm so brilliant, but that doesn't mean I make money all the time. Like even his, he literally has the scene where he's obsessing over the edit for his movie. And he's doing it over and over and over. And then the guy's like, you can't keep doing it. Look, oh my God, it's been 4 months. You're spending millions of dollars. And then he sits down. He's like, oh, it's better. Damn.
I know. That's like, that's why I think this movie is so good, because like, I do think there is the air of there being a pat on the back of how good he is and what he does.
That's all I'm saying.
And I am sort of fast. Like, again, like, I don't think this is like him being like Jesus, being like, I'm apologizing for everything I've ever done. I think he like really is extremely aware of how he treats people and how people see him and what he makes other people feel like. He's also aware that he's really fucking good. And he is. This movie is incredible. He just was like a very competitive person who kind of had more feuds in his head than existed in real life. Do you know what I mean? Like, famously, he won for directing over Coppola for Godfather. He won for Cabaret, which is great. It's an amazingly directed movie. That. Yes, this was like a big deal where they were like, oh my God, Godfather's going to sweep, and then like it didn't, and then it was like specifically the directing, like it was like such a big deal. Yeah. And like he had a thing where he was like, now every time we have a movie in theaters at the same time as Coppola, if I lose even once, I've lost. I guarantee Coppola was not thinking this back at back at the cushy Coppola estate. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's such an interesting view into his psyche that he knows isn't right, but isn't willing to like be like, okay, I'm wrong. Like, he knows it's messed up, but instead of like fixing it, he's like so far down the rabbit hole. He's like, what if I just commemorated it in the most like astounding way possible?
Right. Well, I feel like that's kind of this thing where it sort of portrays, I suppose, what I was going to say is this sort of damaging view of art, I think, where it can, I think we can feel like, oh, the only people that succeed in art are these twisted, alcoholic, Lothario geniuses who have to tank everything. I mean, he literally says at some point, like, I was a genius, but alas, I have tanked my personal life. I sucked at everything else. And I think a lot of people will look at that and go, right, yeah, that's how it works. And I actually feel like it's just not true, generally speaking. I mean, obviously it can be, and there are incredible examples like Bob Fosse and others. There are a lot of rock stars that, what is it, the 27 Club? 26 Club? 27 Club?
27,
Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, all these people that die. But I do feel like, why don't we get into movies about the guys in their mom's basement just working really hard? We need a movie for us. No,
I mean, I do. I really agree with you, and I think that what saves this movie from being just self-indulgent, well, this is how you have to live, is that it's so unapologetically showing that he's miserable
Sure.
and that he's ruining his life and that the relationships in his life are all suffering for it. And that, like, at the end, this movie ends with this, like, unbelievable 10-minute sequence called Bye Bye Life, where, like, Ben Vereen as sort of like a band leader comes out and does this like celebration of the end of his life. And in his mind, he's like going around and kissing all the people goodbye. And, you know, they're all there to
Right.
applaud him and cheer him on. And like, this is all strictly fantasy. Like, that isn't how people view him. That isn't what's happening. Like, in his pre-death fantasy, he's shaking his daughter's hand and saying, you know, good luck to his current girlfriend who's with her new boyfriend, and saying, you're really going to miss me, to his ex-wife, and everyone's thinking he's the best. But then it hard cuts to them zipping up a body bag where he's completely and entirely alone, and that's reality. Do you know what I mean? Like, the movie makes it so true. Like, sorry, I feel like I talked a lot. I just think this movie is really excellent.
You brought the movie. That's what we're supposed to. I think that's ultimately what this podcast should be, is just people using movies to talk about things that they care about, as opposed to trying, because we don't seem to hit as well when we're like, oh, a new movie came out, here's how it stirred my soul in the 3 days sense. And it probably works a little bit better when we're like, yeah, it means a lot to you. And actually that's what I think is so interesting, and something that I was gonna mention too for you specifically, Allie, is this. Presumably it matters to you so much. Obviously it's a good movie in a lot of ways, but there are lots of good movies. And so for you to be really, really interested in this one is probably, if I had to guess, your interest in theater, because you named many people that I don't know or give a shit about. And they're all theater people. And I think, you know, we've talked before about how, like in middle school, you were sort of the kid that wanted to do all these things. Like, did it feel? It's interesting that you saw this in college as opposed to as an impressionable middle school.
It was not an impressionable young child. It was like, I was already very committed to like doing theater with my life. Like, and I just thought, I mean, like, really, I just think it's like, I think it's like an amazing feat of filmmaking. I really do.
Sure.
And I have showed this movie to people who know a lot about Fosse, and I've showed this movie to people who have no idea about theater, and the reaction is largely pretty similar.
Yeah.
I think whenever I'm trying to like sell it to people, I'm like, okay, cool, just a little crash course. This was made by Bob Fosse, who already had an Oscar for Best Director. He kind of had like carte blanche to make his next thing because it was like such an amazing feat that he won Best Director for this amazing movie, Cabaret. And what he chose to make was this excoriating view of himself if he had died when he had a near-death experience. That's what I say. I don't go like, and then the musical numbers and Gwen Verdon, and if you know about this, like, that's like where my like elevator pitch ends. And usually that's enough for people to go, okay, that's weird. I'll give that a shot. And like many people do. And I've definitely encountered people who've enjoyed it to various degrees, but I've never encountered somebody who's been like, why the fuck did you make me watch that? I hated that. Like, no one's ever hated it.
Sure. And even, I mean, I will say, even the surrealness of it is not, it's not that crazy. Like, it's odd to have three surgeons on stage explaining what they're going to do to his heart over top of each other as if it were a performance. But there's nobody repeatedly giving birth to themselves. You know what I mean? So like, it's not, it's still very followable in my sense. Like, I feel like sometimes we've seen movies that are weird and they're a little hard to follow. It's all very clear to me. Like, it doesn't feel, I think it took a little while for me to understand that he was talking to the angel of death or whatever. Yeah. But even that is, you know, whatever. You see the freaking flight attendant on HBO had that whole thing where she just keeps jumping into her brain to talk to the guy from Game of Thrones or whatever.
I didn't know that, but that's fun. Everybody's like, I've seen Seventh Seal, but I can do it better. So yeah. I like that. We're just trying to do it for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it makes no sense in that show. But the first season's fun. I haven't seen the second season. It doesn't matter. But I think it's interesting that you say that everybody likes it, because I do think there's something to the effect, or something appealing to me that it may have been less appealing 5 years ago, which is like, obviously Hollywood makes a lot of movies about Hollywood. And so, the closer you get to that ever mattering to you, the more you're like, oh, I am interested to learn about. Apparently, it's just naked women dancing. Sounds great. It becomes you feel it a little bit more because you're like, yeah, it is hard to make things, and yeah, I love Alka-Seltzer and stuff like that. So
And Visine drops.
Can't get enough of that shit, man.
I mean, I am sure you have looked at yourself in the mirror before you had to go film some dumb thing that is your fault. You put yourself in the position of needing to film it and looked yourself dead in the eyes and thought, it's showtime. It's kind of universal.
I've done it with music. I don't know if I've done it with anything that I've filmed, but definitely been
God.
like at a stupid church gig or whatever. There's like a bunch of fourth graders, and I'm like, well,
it's showtime.
It's showtime.
To me, I always have a cigarette hanging out of my bottom lip, and I'm just dead-eyed in the mirror, about to film my stupid self-tape for something I know I'm not going to book, but I have to do it, or else I'm going to have a bad relationship with my agent. Like, it's showtime, baby. It's showtime. It's showtime.
Yeah, see, I do that before I go to work as an editor for a website, but I bumble it up. Yeah. I dump
Alka-Seltzer in your eyes.
Alka-Seltzer in my eye. I accidentally drink the Visine. I have horrible diarrhea for the next 3 days.
See, that's
I listen
fun,
to Mozart, not Vivaldi.
I'm imagining you now having the like insane dream sequence at the end where like you're on the table with the ventilator, but you're also outside yourself directing it. And it's like you directing like Sonic the Hedgehog in a ballet with like Darth Vader or something insane. Like
you all came. Or like they're like some vibes of like Big Fish where he like meets all his like friends and family at the end, but it's just like
you're like, I told you Knuckles was real.
Yeah.
He came at my funeral.
He mouth kissed me right before I died.
Jesse's
now he's pregnant with me.
Jesse's angel of death is just like imagining talking to like the owner of the parent company or whatever. He's just that's all you're doing every day is don't take me now.
Our CEO's boss's boss.
Yeah, right.
They're at the end of a long hallway.
Yeah. And instead of like a flirty banter, it's me like pitching like, hey, what if we like had fan art on site? We could make a new tab at the top of the site.
It's like, oh, you're cute.
My question for you, Jordan, because I've seen this movie many a time, but I was trying to watch it with like a specific lens for this rewatch, was what'd you think about the father-daughter stuff?
I thought you'd ask that.
What'd you think, man?
What I wrote down was, I hope my kid is never that smart or never that insightful into my personal life, I suppose. And that was all I wrote. I mean, ultimately, I appreciated it. So it's we're gonna do a side note. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons with some people, and I assume he doesn't watch. Me?
Why didn't you tell me that?
I haven't been in like 7 weeks because we've been doing improv of all things. It's at the same time. But
I mean, what is that that vine that's like, how does it feel to be living my dream? You know what I'm talking about? I said vine, I'm old. TikTok.
Yeah, 6-second loops. So been playing. I assume this dude's not gonna hop on. But it doesn't matter. I'm gonna say it anyway because I probably should have in IRL. But I knew that they had become a father of a daughter within the last year, and I hadn't talked to him in forever. And I was like, hey, you're a dad. That's so cool. How's it going? And he's like, she's kind of a bitch. And I was like, I hate you. I hate you forever.
As a baby?
Yeah, as a 1-year-old. I'm like, if your kid sucks, it's your fault.
Also, they are babies. They're just
that's what I'm saying.
For what you do. She barely has free will.
Right. So either you're reacting unfairly because it's an infant child who's hungry or something, or you're corrupt. I don't know. It's we'll see when they're like 20, but like,
yeah,
my baby has my wife's eyes. They're disgusting.
Yeah. They're judging me right now.
And so I think pretty early on he like abandons her even though he promised and stuff like that. So I got the sadness of that, but I had a hard time. I know he like smiles when she dances with his mistress, but I was like, I don't know. I'm not
see my
envious
read of that.
Anyway.
To defend that moment as being more important than that.
I don't think it's not important. I just think my little heart, I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
bad
No, I mean,
dad.
like, again, in a movie where he was nicer to himself, he'd be a better
Mm.
dad. And in a movie where he was nicer to himself,
Oh,
he'd
okay,
have a
fair.
scene where he gives her an amazing speech about don't make my mistakes and do. But instead, what we really see is that he hasn't cracked a smile for the first 40 minutes of the film. Everything stresses him out. Nothing gives him pleasure. Nothing's good enough. He's the most exacting bastard on the planet. And then his daughter choreographs a dance with his new girlfriend, and he's moved to tears.
Yeah.
To tears. And you're like, I guarantee that hasn't happened to him in years. I can't
Sure.
possibly, knowing this character, imagine the last time he's been so moved by somebody's piece of art that he's like sat and cried about it. And so it's like he clearly like adores her. And he definitely fears for what her life will be like with him as an influence, because in the end, when they're having the like nightmare sequence of numbers, there's like a trio of back-to-back numbers that's like the wife, the girlfriend, the daughter. And in the daughters, she's got like her face done up in way too much makeup, and she's wearing like a really, really adult costume. And her song is basically like, you're really gonna miss me when you're gone. And to me, it feels like the fear of leaving your daughter behind without having really done the right thing, and being like, oh no, did I mess her up for life? Will I never see what happens? Like, I think I made a messed her up forever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and like, I definitely felt bad about those things, but I don't know. It's something I guess maybe, you know, we'll have to see. We'll have to get further along, and I'll have to make more clear mistakes where my daughter is like sad and mad at me for that to register. No, I'm not saying that I'm like doing it perfectly. I'm just saying that there are times when I've done or said something that I regretted, and she floats away because she doesn't even really comprehend what's going on yet.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like, whoo, dodge the bullet. And so anyway, you know, I think I mostly gravitate towards I like dads that care about their daughters thing, which he does ostensibly. That's why he is hallucinating about her. He even cares about his ex-wife. She's obviously in that scene as well. He's still working with her. He cares about his mistress, even though he doesn't do a great job of showing it. Obviously.
So here's a question for Allie, the Bob Fosse historian.
Yes.
How did the rest of his life go? Did he make amends with his family? Did he die of a heart attack? I forget how he died.
Yes, he died of exactly what he thought he was going to die of.
Damn.
Just later. And like, the movie is pretty accurate in that, like, he had a really messy divorce from Gwen Verdon, but like they really did remain close collaborators and allies as they got older, especially insofar as they were in agreement that the projects that they worked on together could really benefit their family and their daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, Gwen was sort of like, it's the very least you can do for what you've like done to my life. Like, the very least you can do is like stage this show, make sure it's as excellent as I know it will be because you worked on it. If I work on it with anybody else, all I'm going to do is wish that you worked on it. Like, let's just make it good and let's have it run forever, and we'll never have to worry about money again, which is very much true.
It feels like, I'm only making this comparison because I recently finished rewatching it, but it feels like a Breaking Bad where Walter White, instead of Walter White being a really good chemist, he's good at choreographing and fucking.
Totally.
Well, and this is a pretty, I mean, the way it happens and the quality to which it does is different. But like, this is a pretty standard, you know, tortured genius. And I guess that was my point earlier, is like, we tend to get these depictions a lot more often. I mean, because to be fair, like, who's going to make a video about the guy who just works hard for 40 years?
Totally. I mean, I honestly think that, like,
you know,
one of the closer comparisons to this movie would be something like Social Network, where the attitude of the movie is like, well, this guy's a genius, but goddamn, I don't want to have a conversation with him. However, the interesting part of that being that movie was made by David Fincher, not by Zuckerberg himself, being like, or an eye stinker. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what makes this movie so interesting, is that, like, it feels like a movie made by somebody else to say, like, well, you all think you love Bob Fosse, but what if you really knew what he was like? It's like, it really is him being like, this is what I'm like. I'm telling you with unapologetically that this is who I am.
So this is what it actually reminds me of. That's a really good point. Have you seen, I saw this, there's a Jared Leto documentary directed by Jared Leto. And there's so many
trash that one.
Scenes of him being weird and like, ooh, what a weirdo. He's got such odd thoughts. But then when you realize he's chosen every one of those to show you, I don't know. It's just it's such
Yeah.
an interesting. It's curated weirdness, and so whatever. I don't necessarily have a problem with it because I think there's something fascinating to that as well. To your point, like what if Zuckerberg made social network where he just like it would be interesting to see how he explains the hot or not part
Right.
of Facebook's
And like
history.
my guess is
I
that
just want to find a wife.
in a movie in a movie or a biography or something made about him by him, it would be a lot less exacting and it would be a lot less, it'd be a lot more flattering. And like it, part of the appeal of this movie is that like
it's not technically
what he,
him.
yeah, and what he says
Yeah.
is like, I am venturing to say I'm a genius. I really do think I'm a genius. Like he is saying that. Do you know what I mean? The characters will regard me as such and I will behave as such. But that's it. That's all I got going for me. Everything else is demonstrably worse because of my attitude and my approach. And so like, yes, the editor sits down and goes like, Jesus Christ, it's better. I put him through hell to do it. I was right. I don't know if that makes it capital C correct in terms of like being a person who makes art. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. The movie, I think like this reaction is the intended reaction. Like, I don't think he was like, I think people are going to walk out of this movie and love me. Like, I really think he wanted us to be having this exact conversation 40 years later.
Just realized the character who I most empathize with in the movie is John Lithgow or Gow.
Yes.
John Lithgow. He's just a hardworking dude, just looking for his shot. Thought he was going to have it. He did all that work for free.
I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be Hal Prince. I think like he's like the stand-in for this Broadway director Hal Prince, who's like was a titan of the industry. I don't know if you ever want to fall down that rabbit hole someday, but I think that's who he was like meant to stand in for.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a titan someday. Here it comes.
Yeah. Of what? TikTok, Snapchat,
just the industry. Just pick one.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah, probably steel.
Titan of everything, I feel.
I'm gonna be a Rockefeller. I'm gonna make trains. I'm gonna make them arrive on time. Yeah, Jordan Teen Titan breeding. There you go. Tighten up. I know that all of you don't prioritize, or both of you don't prioritize this podcast and have places to be. So do we want to go over to the unwashed masses, as I affectionately the cracked heads?
I mean, I would like to know if people
cracked heads.
I would like to know if people have seen this movie, and if so, like
a lot of people have.
I feel like we haven't talked about the musical numbers, which is kind of crazy in a movie that like has musical numbers. So I'd like to get about that.
Talk about some friggin' music crap.
So I wasn't sure a couple of times if the musical numbers are supposed to be jokes or if they're all dead serious. Just like so much, just like scatting and snapping and stuff that I guess I've seen so many parodies of it that when I see somebody like being very earnest and like snapping while looking into the camera, I'm like, oh, it's a joke. Fine.
No, he invented snapping and looking into the camera, unfortunately.
Well, what did he literally? I know he invented a lot of like weird dancing shit that I assumed was just had been around since. Yeah, I think we did.
I was trying to do something else. Oh, okay, we're back.
Oh my god, what if I hadn't been wearing pants? I'm just kidding. Yay!
What's up? But I'm curious, Allie, like what dance stuff did he revolutionize?
Yeah. So like his dream was always to be like the next Fred Astaire, essentially. Like he wanted to be like a slick song and dance man. Mm-hmm. But wasn't built like that, like literally physically. Like he didn't have the long legs and the long torso, and he was like a lot more athletic than suave, and he always had like a slick
too, yeah.
He has had like a slickness as opposed to like a charm. Like people would see him try and do like a slick, like a charm song and dance number and be like, you're weird, you kind of make me feel bad, not good. Like
there is something weird about the sexuality of the 70s between Bob Fosse getting all the ass he wants, Bob Ross also like a weird
hair.
Kind of weird guy,
had a hair like that
guy. Sure, I guess.
But yes, so like he sort of in retaliation was like, why don't I invent a a form of dance that plays to my strengths that really goes completely in the face of like what we think of as like classic musical theater dance. Thanks, Home
Yeah.
Depot. I hope you're sponsoring us.
That's literally what I was just about to ask. Can you sponsor us?
Yeah, are we getting money? So like, as opposed to like a long balletic extended arm, they're always like very close to the body. It's like elbows
Oh,
in towards
yeah.
like the rib cage, and instead of like like ballet hands. Oh my god, how do I do this? You know what I mean? Like like gentle and delicate. It's like splayed, like wide, and like gloves, and yes, and like very small, very controlled movements, much more athletic and less balletic. A lot of like up and down floor work. Like I think honestly, if you want a really good example of it, you can pull up in this movie the Anne Ranking number from the dream sequence, which is called "You Better Change Your Ways." And what she's doing is like there's a whole section of it where she's just standing on one leg and she's moving so much but not at all. That's like a really good example if anybody's watching this and actually wants to like be like, what is Bob Fosse dance? Like go watch that one.
This is all it's all coming back to me now. What got me actually psyched about Bob Fosse when you and the other musical theater nerds were teaching me about him is that like he wanted to be this very specific type of star. He realized his limitations and then he was kind of like, fuck you, I'm gonna make my own genre.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
cool as hell.
It is
now
cool.
I'm behind him getting all kinds of sex and drugs and stuff. That makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
So is there any of that like is mainstream today? Like
yes. So another really interesting thing people could watch, should you be interested, is there is a made-for-TV movie of the story The Little Prince. It's a musical. It's not very good. You do not need to watch the full thing. There is one number that is performed by Bob Fosse and choreographed by Bob Fosse, and he is playing the snake. I don't know if you're familiar with Little Prince, but there's a snake. He does Michael Jackson. He basically moonwalks. He's got wearing a black suit with a bowler hat and one white glove. It is like and like admittedly, like Michael Jackson wasn't like, what? No, I didn't say that. Like he was like, I like Bob Fosse is the reason I dance the way that I dance. Like that, like fully made it into that part of that.
Cool as
culture.
hell.
And if you happen to be a fan of Paula Abdul, sorry, couldn't remember. She has a music video that is a direct reference to All That Jazz, where she's like, we've been working on it. It's so sexy. You're going to love it. And then they basically do the Takeoff With Us number from All That Jazz. And it's like fully Fosse choreography. And it's like on the scaffolding and they're all half naked and stuff. Like it's all very in the culture. Like it was pretty.
And guess who directed that music video?
Who?
Dave Fincher. Full circle.
Is that true?
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
I'm going to click it. It's the same one. Yep.
That's crazy.
He used to do music videos. That was his whole thing until he did Alien 3. Anyway, then he went there. But
that's crazy. Yeah. That's really cool, honestly. Like, what a fun fact.
Yeah. So when this movie, I'm just like really fascinated with like where this fits in like the history of the entertainment industry. So when this movie came out, okay, so he just won the whatever.
Yeah.
Was he
the whatever?
Was he at the peak of his fame, or was he like did he get more famous because of this movie, or did his career go on to continue exploding?
I mean, he didn't live all that much longer, to be honest.
Okay.
But yes, he
yeah.
Was already a huge success on Broadway. He had already won like many Tonys. He had like, a bunch of things like that. Then he made a huge splash with directing Cabaret for stage, for film, and got Oscars for that. He won a bunch of Emmys. He did the staging and choreography for Liza with a Z. He won like an Emmy for that. So he was pretty famous at this point and like pretty much at the top of his career. And this movie specifically, he won the Palme d'Or, which is like a big thing if you care about that kind of thing. And so like this was a big success when he was already pretty darn famous.
Mm-hmm.
Then he died.
I was gonna say he only made like 2 other things, one play and one movie. It looks like.
Yeah, and like the movie that he's editing in this movie that's called The Stand Up in this movie is Lenny, which is like the Lenny Bruce movie that had like Dustin Hoffman,
nice,
which was like not really a hit. I don't know. He had some ups and downs. He did Sweet Charity, that was kind of not a hit at all. really mostly like his style of dance became so, it's like synonymous with like, I mean, like I was gonna say with Fosse, duh. But like to have like a style of dance named after you specifically, that it's like a one word thing and everybody knows what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
like it's more like, 20 years later, they were doing a show on Broadway called Fosse that was just like only his best numbers restaged. And like you would go to see a 2-hour musical and it would only be like the best Fosse numbers. Like, how cool is that? That like you've made such an impact in that way.
Yeah. All right. We really need to throw it to the masses because some of
Yes,
you are
masses.
and some
Let's
of you
wash them
have
up.
other things. All right. So many alt titles at the beginning. Roxas? Rosas, the hero of time, says that I'm a staple in his house. Great. Thanks.
That's nice.
Oh, no, too late. Too
Jordan,
early
get
for
out of their
booze.
houses.
It's gone.
They're excited. How excited you were.
Thank you.
Mhm.
They thought it was a self-help podcast. That's interesting.
Mhm. It actually
You
is.
got breakup advice, says Michael H. Do you need to be
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I would say that Fosse would tell you to just start sleeping with somebody else immediately.
yeah, I have no follow-up.
And obviously, everything worked well for him. He was
Yeah.
happy, famously, and never miserable, and it all worked great.
Somebody wanted Two Worlds says, so like, can we talk about all that jazz vibes that I got from watching Joker, especially the scenes with him putting on his face paint in the mirror? I mean, I do think so. Regardless of whether it's this film specifically, I do think 70s movies feel similar. Something about the editing, something about the way that the camera worked. Like, even when I was just watching this movie, I was like, it feels 70s. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's a lot of these like weird zooms, like manual zooms, and the like hard cuts from we are talking about weird thing here, and now it's the angel of death. And there's not like a lot of like flowing into things. It's a lot of like this scene. And also obviously the film grain and everything like that. The weird. I don't know why. Like every 70s movie I've ever seen, the audio entirely cuts out except for some really awkward Foley effects. Like in that scene where everybody starts laughing at the jokes in the script, and he's not. I think he might be having a heart attack. Is why he's not hearing things, but he's snapping pencils and stuff like that. Feels like a thing that I've seen a lot. Anyway, so Joker, the movie, is of that era. It's a taxi driver ripoff and all that stuff. So I think that's why it feels that way, even irrespective of all that jazz. It's just of that. It's intentionally evocative of that era, I think. What were you going to say, Jess?
It's reminding me of a class I took in college. It was just something about the history of film. And there was a long time where like, and I think it kind of led into the 70s, like when film was could almost be viewed as like a sculpture. Oh,
thank you, Angela. There.
Hey,
I really appreciate it.
Angel.
Thank you.
But yeah, thinking of film as a sculpture. And so like back in the I know this is late 70s, and so it's not, it's close to modern, but still there was some like rougher edges when they were using it as more of an art. There was still remnants of when it was like an art form more than like a storytelling form, I guess.
I do feel that.
Yeah.
Not
that they're mutually exclusive, but there was a lot more like now if you're making a film, you know exactly like what the cuts are going to be and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I mean, like, and also now when you're making a film, the first people who see it will be some semblance of a test audience. And so you were like, whether or not you admit it, like writing with an end goal in mind. And like, I really don't think that was like part of it here. So also famously, this movie, like, he went over budget. He was not supposed to, but as you know, Bob Fosse doesn't listen to people. He went over budget. So he was going to air it. He was going to air what they had and put together to, I don't know, whether it was Fox or something like that. And they were prepared to be like, listen, man, you made what you made. You're going to put together what you can put together. And that's what's going to happen here. And then they aired it and they were like, fucking good. Fuck. And so they had to like co-pro it with another studio who put up the last like 3 million or whatever it was to finish it because it was so stupid good. Like I find this all very fascinating because like I'm not that kind of a person. Do you know what I mean? Like if somebody told me I had a budget, I would be like, yes, sir. I would never in a million years be like, I'll go over budget and see what happens. Like, but I am fascinated by like the history of this and the portrayal of himself in the movie being exactly what he's like in real life. Like it's literally happening the musical in the show, in the fictional movie NYLA, is going over budget and they're mad at him. And in real life, he's going over budget on all that jazz and they're mad at him. Like it's all it's all happening.
Maybe he wrote and filmed that scene when he was getting to the top of the budget and showed them that part and was like, right?
Perhaps life imitates art.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think as far as like Joker specifically too, yeah, it's just a lot of, it just so happens that he's a stand-up comic just trying to make it in the big world. He's a genius, just like, Bob Fosse.
Is he a genius in the movie?
No, not at all.
Okay.
He's a murderous little crappy clown. He's just a bad.
Who among us aren't? A murderous little crappy clown. This is cute.
So found out Penumbra. I'm sorry, you guys have such weird names on YouTube. I found out that my 9-year-old son is really into Dungeons and Dragons, and now I'm having to learn about it by trips to the library and internet. I hope he becomes a great wizard. Any tips? I don't think the point of the game is to be good at it necessarily. I mean, I think it depends on what you want, what your son wants from it, but I think that's kind of the beauty of the game, right? So I think ultimately what's going to work best for your 9-year-old is if you play it with them at all.
True.
Right?
I would also say not as a DM, but as a player. So if you're like playing with your son, not running the game, but like you guys are playing together, if he's playing with other people, affirming other people's choices, even if you disagree with them as the character, is totally okay. It's better. It is okay for you as Jordan to go, well, what I famously don't get along with Allie's character. I think what she's doing is stupid, but not to stop me from doing it in game. So do you know what I mean? Like you can it's a very fun experience because it's improv and you do have to say yes, but you can also like have. I played for years a character who was really stupid, and so I would be like, I know that this is probably stupid, but I know my character wouldn't not walk in, so like I'm gonna walk in. Stuff like that is good, and the more you are upfront about it, I think it leads to less like resentment and weirdness at the table, where you can be like, I think Jordan's character is making a mistake, but I'm not going to stop Jordan from having fun. Like Jordan should go make that mistake, and then when I need to go like save his ass, I'll go do that.
Yeah, and I think again,
sorry,
it's the stories that you make. Like I spend most of my time arguing that they should be paying me more because I'm better. My character tends to win fights more often than theirs at this low stage because I'm like a freaking Goliath or whatever.
I love it.
And I think it's mostly about having fun. What's weird is my dad, who does stamps. I can't remember if I've mentioned that. He's one of the only people in the world who makes stamps. They're doing a Dungeons and Dragons line, and so he's been learning a lot about it. And I still don't know very much about it. I just have been sort of playing. And then I got upset with one of my travelers about his daughter, but that's fine.
I found it's helpful to actually watch some. I mean, whatever, like D&D or tabletop roleplay games are like getting more and more popular, and it's worth checking them out. Like I was able to see like what's possible by watching some of these shows. So if you happen to like this podcast, Allie had a D&D podcast. What was it called?
Second Best. I had a D&D podcast for truly years that we worked really hard on. It was called Second Best D&D. And I played a big, dumb idiot. And I miss him every day. I love him.
Yes, check that out.
All right, we got 7 more minutes. So what's jazz?
What's jazz? Great question.
Well, wasn't jazz like just a classic example of a word that meant sex originally? And then people used
like rock and roll?
Yeah. Well, maybe potentially. I don't know if that's actually true, but like
it was like slang for sex,
for fucking. Yeah, like a lot of there's like a history of like these like what was at one time fringe genres of music and dancing that like people like the old folks were like this is too sexual. This is a tool of the devil. Anyway, I think jazz literally meant sex at one point. But anyway,
wow, I would say jazz is all the friends we made along the way.
So a lot of people think that it's actually from jazzum, which is a slang term meaning like pep or energy. And then at some point when Broadway got to it,
Jesse and I both went the exact same thing when we went, and then went, like we had the same journey.
And then at some point Broadway picked it up and added Z's to it, and people thought that made it sound dirty. So I think it's a little bit of both. Like I think it was jazz or something with an S.
It was originally called cum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which meant pep.
I got
Yeah.
pep all over my step. Ugh.
Yeah, somebody was just, they were mentioning that it's a lot of the like, it's referenced in a lot of things like an American Dad or whatever. So you see a lot of stupid
Yeah.
versions of this all the time. So when you watch the actual inspiration, it's like, oh, that's dumb. That's like that cartoon I watched. Stephen Guy remembers this as a kid as dark, smoky dance floor with naked ladies and finger snapping.
You're not wrong. That totally happens.
That's also Allie's apartment.
Yeah, it was actually filmed on location here before I was born. And then I was like, I have to live here.
Yeah. Get out of here, naked ladies, and smoke. Thank you for covering this movie. They also recommend Fosse the Musical, which you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Callie Myers Buchanan. Wow, you really want somebody to find your social and blow up your house.
Stop.
Get your middle name.
Jesus.
Don't scare her.
Well, you know, it's the internet. You got to grow up sometime.
It's either full names or nicknames you can't pronounce. You got to pick one.
Yeah.
Those are it. Is this one of the actresses?
So she's
I
not
mean,
one of the
presumably.
main actresses. She's one of the dancers. I think this was her first movie. She's like a real classic babe from like Conan the Barbarian and things like that. Like she was like a movie babe.
Is she the topless one or whatever?
The
I gotta be honest, I don't
That's
think
fair.
so. If I
Okay.
remember correctly, I think she's mostly in the opening dance sequence when he's like really working with those girls, trying to like cast them in the show. But I gotta be honest, I don't remember. I don't know if her character has like a character name.
Okay. Yeah, great. She could have had a bigger role because I didn't know her at all. Are we going to do the older Dungeons and Dragons movie? Has that affected any of you personally in a deep way? Are you going to watch the
No.
Chris Pine one?
I'll go see that.
I'll watch that. I'd be
I
interested
feel like
in
it'd be
watching the
fun.
old one.
It would be fun if everybody went with their little D&D groups. So a D&D movie. You know what I mean? It's like a cute little thing that you can do together.
I mean, it's going to happen.
I don't know if I like my... Well, I like a lot of them. We
Jordan
won't
just
say
going, I
who.
don't know if I like my friends. Anyway, moving on to the next thing.
All right, we're going to do alternate titles because we got 3 minutes. So actually,
Sick.
why don't we start with Jesse at the disco before he has to
Jesse at the disco.
sign off?
Great. Well, funny you should say that. Prescriptions in the bathroom. Okay, all those nips, all that junk.
Okay.
Okay, well, you're not gonna like this one. Horny dancing with my dad. I don't like how they dance together, and how she
Okay.
called him daddy. I didn't want to bring it up earlier, but really bugged me.
You were like, I'm
This
not
was
gonna
kind
say
of
this.
pre
Nope, I'm
that
gonna
being
say
a
this.
thing. But
Okay, here we go. We'll end on this one. Dr. Hyman's angina.
is his name Hyman?
His name's Dr. Hyman. Yeah, and he.
Hi, my cat. Hi, my cat staring at me through the door. Sorry.
Well, yep. So we got those. Let's go to the people.
Yeah.
Joe Maximus pitched like 6 titles because Joe,
Great.
are you with your kid right now? Are you with Wyatt? Is Wyatt there? Did Wyatt pitch them? Anyway, Joe's got Smokelahoma.
I mean, I like it.
I
Yeah.
like it a lot.
That tie-dye died and got reincarnated as a sexual harassment lawsuit. Pretty
that too.
involved. Sticky Pants, the musical. Sex, Drugs, and Broadway's Droll. Is Droll? Interesting.
I think so.
And The Land Before Tatas. These are pretty weird, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I would
Why?
argue the movie has shown the movie posits that tatas are everywhere, and that they're actually a little scary.
Are they? Yeah, I guess.
In this movie, they're
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
like, "Ooh, my life is messed up now."
Daira says Fear and Loathing in New York. Pretty good.
That's a good one. Like that.
Anime Titties says alt title
back.
Confession of a Jazz Drama Queen.
These
Yep.
are, if I'm not mistaken, new anime titties.
Yeah, they've changed almost
New.
every time, I think.
Good job.
Yeah, I've been cataloging. We got All That Ass, which is similar to some of these other ones. Absolutely not Nickelodeon's All That. That's true. By Stephen Guy. And Jizz, which is Star Wars Jazz. I do think that as a title is funny. Because I wonder if that would get us past censors.
Ooh.
It's like in Star Wars, which is jazz. Trying to get away with that. All that jizz parentheses, which is like in Star
which is
Wars.
jazz in Star Wars. Yeah.
In what is the language they speak in Star Wars? I think is basic, right?
That's what it's called.
Yeah, that's what English is. Yeah,
Basic?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
George Lucas was in a hurry. He had some toys to dream up.
Yeah. Like in D&D, it's common. You're like, stop just being mean to me. I'm
right.
great.
Speak English. You're in America.
Exactly. Okay, I'll speak common then. Fine.
Speak normal. The ones I had before we go to you, Allie, since this is your movie, so you get to
I did. I made
have
this
the
movie,
final
actually.
say.
I did actually make this movie.
I had We're Gonna Need a Bigger Jazz.
Love it.
We didn't talk about that, but he's also in Jaws.
He's so good in this movie, and he's so
nice.
good in Jaws. And also, this role like wasn't supposed to be his. It was supposed to be Richard Dreyfuss, who then like dropped out, and like it's like kind of a miracle that he's in this role, and it's all great. Everything worked out for the best.
Yeah, so we're gonna need a bigger jazz, and All She Jazzed is what we already had from earlier.
I do like All She Jazzed, and my only pitch is Murder She Jazzed.
Murder She Jazzed, but nobody got murdered. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. He murdered him.
But didn't he murder himself? Yeah. Too much effervescence.
Too much ennui. Yeah. Great. I think that's it. We got everybody. We're done. Tatas are scary.
Good
Says
job,
Fresh
everybody.
Boy JB. There you go. Looks like somebody that might be. Oh, that's a different person. Hold on. Fresh Boy JB right here.
Then you're not gonna like this movie.
That's it. Good movie.
Yeah,
you should watch it. It's
Yeah.
on.
Very
It's
nice.
on Tubi. Tubi, which might be the only streaming service left soon. So get on that, I suppose.
Yeah. And also, this movie tends to disappear a lot, which is strange. Like, there was like a 2 or 3 year period where I couldn't show this movie to anybody because it was like not on anything, and I had to like start lending people DVDs. So if you're gonna watch it, I would say just watch it soon before it all goes away.
Yeah. I'm glad that this movie was fine with it, but when I was watching all the Saw movies, I saw Saw 8 on like Peacock or something, and it was the most unsettling thing where they're like, somebody's getting their leg ripped off, and it'll be like, vegetables. You love them. And you're like, ah.
I do love vegetables. Please don't rip off my leg. I'll eat my vegetables.
Or at the end, it would be like, chop, chop, chop. Here comes your HelloFresh. It's just like blood squirting everywhere. And you're like, this was not, you do have to, my point being that on Tubi, you have to watch ads, but it's not as stressful as it was when I was watching Jigsaw, the 8th Saw movie.
Sure,
not the last.
Sure, was amazing. Yeah.
Tubi, check it out.
It was pretty good for that kind of thing. And that's it. We're done. We're going to say goodbye. Jesse's going to go live on the street. Allie's going to go hang out with children. Oh, no. I don't know what you're doing. You're watching
I will see Teens tonight, but I'm going to go see a Broadway show tonight.
Yeah.
How appropriate.
Awesome. That's it. Goodbye.
Bye.
Farewell.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Goodbye.